We often picture arriving in a new country as this moment of like pure relief, the end of a really tough journey, the start of something. Well, amazing.
Right. The finish line.
Exactly. But what if that arrival is actually just the beginning of a whole new set of unexpected challenges?
Hmm.
That's what we've been digging into, looking at these surprisingly complex hurdles immigrants and refugees face trying to build their lives, in the U.S. and elsewhere.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
So this deep dive is really about getting you up to speed on these multifaceted issues. We want to highlight some of the less obvious difficulties, maybe spark your curiosity a bit.
And do it without, making your head spin. Keep it concise but thorough.
Exactly. Because it's fascinating, isn't it? We focus so much on the initial journey, the act of getting there.
We do. But the sources we looked at, they really shine a light on the long game, integration. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And it unfolds in ways many of us probably don't fully appreciate.
Okay, so let's dive in with something pretty fundamental. Language. You'd think, okay, learn the language, it's practical.
Seems straightforward.
But imagine not being able to communicate your most basic needs. Suddenly, everything, landing a job, making friends, even just like navigating the grocery store, it becomes this incredibly stressful puzzle.
Exactly. And it's more nuanced than just speaking, right? Like, if you can read and write well in your own language, that actually impacts how easily you pick up a new one.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. And then there's the practical side, finding time for English classes when you're working maybe 1-2 jobs just to pay rent, plus family responsibilities.
Forget about it. It's a huge barrier, a real juggling act.
It really is.
And these aren't just, minor inconveniences. Think about the real-world consequences. We saw examples, didn't we? Like someone overpaying for car insurance.
Yeah, just because they couldn't understand the terms.
Right. Or those really awful scams, people pretending to be the IRS, specifically targeting non-native English speakers.
Oh, those are terrible.
It just shows how that lack of language skill can make people incredibly vulnerable.
And that vulnerability, it kind of ripples outwards, doesn't it? It affects finances, sure, but also access to justice, even just personal safety. When you can't understand or make yourself understood, advocating for yourself is just exponentially harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, another really compelling aspect we looked at was raising children in a new culture.
Ah, yes, the intergenerational dynamics.
Right. Parents often find their kids adapting so quickly, maybe becoming more Americanized, you could say, than they are. And that can lead to some unexpected friction within the family.
Well, if you think about the family unit as a system, right, this rapid cultural shift in the kids can really disrupt the established dynamics.
How so?
Well, kids might pick up English and the new customs much faster. Sometimes they end up being the interpreters for their own parents.
Wow, that's a huge weight for a child to carry.
It is a significant shift in that parent-child relationship.
And plus, the sources touched on the really heartbreaking reality of kids facing bullying or just feeling like outsiders at school because their background is different.
Difficult adjustments.
And academically, if they're placed in classes just by age, but they don't have the English skills yet, they can really struggle.
Yeah.
And imagine the frustration of a parent wanting to help with homework, but maybe they can't understand the school's emails or the assignments themselves.
It really brings up a crucial point about the support systems, doesn't it? Are schools and communities actually equipped to support both the kids and the parents through these transitions?
It seems like the need often outweighs the resources available.
That's often the case.
Okay, then there's the bedrock of building a new life.
Right.
Securing work.
Right. Employment.
Even for immigrants who have all their paperwork sorted, finding a good job, advancing their career, it can be this massive uphill battle.
Yeah. And lack of English is a big piece of that, obviously.
Obviously. But it's also, well, it's kind of eye-opening to hear about people who were professionals back home, teachers, engineers, doctors.
Highly skilled individuals.
Yeah. And they end up driving taxis or working in jobs that are completely different, often lower paying just because their foreign credentials aren't recognized here.
What's fascinating and also kind of sad is the sheer waste of talent and potential there.
Right.
These are people with valuable skills, experience. They could be contributing so much more, but they get sidelined by these systemic hurdles. It feels like a loss for everyone involved, really.
And the challenges don't stop even when they find work.
Hmm.
The sources highlighted how immigrants can be particularly vulnerable to exploitation,
Hmm.
sometimes feeling pressured into taking less desirable jobs, maybe even dangerous ones because of their immigration status or, again, limited English.
Yeah, especially undocumented workers, but not only them.
And those agonizing delays,
Yeah.
waiting for work permits while the immigration processes just grind along, that must create immense financial hardship.
Oh, absolutely. That financial insecurity that so many newly arrived immigrants face.
Yeah.
It's this constant source of stress. It impacts their health, their well-being, their ability to really integrate and contribute.
And speaking of basics, finding a safe, affordable place to live, another major hurdle.
Huge one. Housing.
Affordable housing is tough anyway, but imagine trying to navigate that with limited income, maybe a larger family. Overcrowding can become a real issue, really stressful living
It might be
situations.
stressful.
And sadly, the sources mention instances of landlords just taking advantage, targeting people who might not know their rights or can't communicate effectively. Like that really upsetting bedbug scam example.
Yeah, but that was awful. It just highlights the need for accessible legal resources,
Yeah.
and education within immigrant communities. Just knowing your rights as a tenant can be a crucial shield against that kind of predatory behavior.
Absolutely. It's not just housing. Accessing essential services, healthcare, legal aid that can be full of obstacles too.
Right.
For undocumented immigrants, there's that constant fear of deportation. It can stop them from seeking help even when they desperately need it.
And that fear, it has significant public health implications, doesn't it? If people are afraid to see a doctor, things can get much worse down the line.
Yeah. Or reporting crimes.
Exactly. Impacts community safety if people are hesitant to engage with law enforcement.
But even for legal immigrants, there are still barriers. Language, again, work schedules that conflict with appointment times, maybe no reliable transportation,
All practical hurdles.
and the mental health aspect. That feels so crucial. Many newcomers have experienced significant trauma,
Hmm. Trauma is common.
but there can be cultural stigmas around seeking mental health support,
Hmm.
or maybe just a lack of awareness about where to even find help.
Yeah, awareness and stigma are big factors.
And even when they do manage to access services, negative experiences because of language barriers, misunderstandings with doctors, maybe misdiagnoses or issues with law enforcement that can be incredibly damaging and make them reluctant to seek help again.
The sources really emphasize the critical need for culturally sensitive services and linguistically accessible ones across all sectors. That includes training for professionals, helping them understand the unique challenges and communication needs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, transportation. Another everyday thing that can become this huge barrier.
Right. Getting around.
Think about trying to get a driver's license if you don't speak English well. Needing a translator, maybe literacy issues for the written test.
It's not straightforward.
And then, if a whole family is sharing just one car, it creates this constant logistical puzzle, getting everyone to work, school, doctor's appointments.
Oh, yeah. The scheduling nightmare.
And that story we saw about the woman from a small rural town who was genuinely terrified by public transportation here.
I remember that.
It really highlighted how something many of us just take for granted can be a major source of anxiety and confusion for someone new to a completely different environment.
That example perfectly illustrates how cultural adaptation goes way beyond just language. It's learning a whole new set of unspoken rules and norms, even for seemingly simple things like navigating a city.
Which brings us neatly to the broader cultural adjustments.
Culture shock.
Right. And it's not always about negative interactions either. Sometimes even well-meaning gestures can completely miss the mark.
Uh-huh.
Remember that example of the hike? It was meant to be a nice activity, but it inadvertently re-traumatized some refugee youth because of their past experiences.
Yeah, that was a powerful example of needing deeper understanding.
So adapting to new customs, social norms, it can lead to serious culture shock, frustration, and just building a new social network when you're juggling a new language and culture. That's a really tough challenge.
The key takeaway there seems to be the vital role of cultural sensitivity, genuine understanding on both sides. Integration really is a two-way street. It requires newcomers and host communities to be open to learning and adapting.
Definitely a two-way street. And then layered on top of all that, you've got the incredibly complex legal and bureaucratic landscape.
Oh, the paperwork, the system itself.
Exactly. Immigration laws are constantly shifting, the paperwork is overwhelming, and the backlogs and delays. With USCIS, that's the Citizenship and Immigration Services in the State Department, they can drag on for years.
Years. It's
Oh.
incredibly stressful for people waiting.
And policy changes can just suddenly drastically impact people's lives and status.
Yeah.
Even something like getting a green card involves navigating this maze of regulations, annual limits, preference
It's
categories.
extremely complex.
And let's not forget the cost. The significant legal fees, application fees.
Hmm.
It's a huge financial burden for families.
And these legal complexities, they often require specialized knowledge. So access to good, qualified immigration lawyers becomes absolutely crucial.
But as the sources also pointed out, that access isn't always equal or affordable for everyone who needs it.
No, definitely not.
So all these factors, understandably, they contribute to significant economic hardship.
It all connects.
You've got the high cost of living, maybe lower initial income,
Hmm.
immense pressure on finances. When those foreign professional qualifications aren't recognized, people often end up in lower-skilled jobs, less pay.
Right. Underemployment is a major issue.
Wage inequality, even the risk of wage theft. Those become very real concerns. And one source really highlighted that intergenerational aspect.
Yeah, the Bush Center piece.
How later generations often feel this responsibility to support family members who face those initial financial struggles.
That intergenerational dynamic really underscores the long-term consequences. The impact isn't just felt by the first generation. It can shape the economic path of families for years, even decades.
And sadly, woven through all of these challenges is the persistent issue of discrimination and prejudice.
Unfortunately, yes.
Bias, stereotyping,
Yeah.
in schools, workplaces, just out in public. It can be incredibly damaging to self-esteem, severely limit opportunities. Workplace discrimination in hiring, promotions, housing discrimination when trying to rent or buy. These are ongoing problems.
You really are.
And without access to legal help, it's incredibly difficult to fight these injustices. The everyday experience of just encountering bias, xenophobia, it takes a significant toll on mental well-being.
And it's important to remember that discrimination isn't always overt, right? It can also be subtle biases, systemic inequalities that create these huge barriers for immigrants in so many aspects of their lives.
Absolutely. Now, taking a slightly wider view for a moment,
Hmm.
the sources also touched on how immigration is a global issue.
Definitely not just a U.S. phenomenon.
Right. It's becoming increasingly prominent, often politically charged in many countries. Concerns about integration, job competition, strain on social services, these are common themes internationally.
If we step back and look at that bigger picture, it's clear the challenges we've discussed aren't unique to any one place. Many nations are grappling with similar complexities as migration patterns shift and change.
But it's not all just challenges and problems. The sources also highlighted some really interesting and potentially effective approaches that governments around the world are exploring. Ways to better support immigrant integration.
Yeah, there were some positive examples.
Like Finland's comprehensive integration policy, personalized plans for newcomers. Or Canada's coordinated efforts across different government agencies, plus support before people even arrive.
That pre-arrival support seems key. And Brazil's Operation Welcome, remember that, resettling Venezuelan immigrants across the country.
Yeah. These examples really show that proactive, well-thought-out policies can make a real, tangible difference. A holistic approach seems crucial.
Right. Addressing everything from language and jobs to cultural inclusion.
And those more specific initiatives, like providing incentives for language training, or those cultural mentor or neighborhood mother programs in Germany.
It sounded really practical.
Like really practical ways to build bridges between cultures and offer valuable, on-the-ground support.
What's notable there is the understanding that successful integration needs both strategic government action and grassroots community involvement. Those kinds of programs help build social connections, give newcomers guidance from people who really understand their experiences.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear, isn't it? The journey for immigrants and refugees often involves navigating this surprisingly intricate web of challenges long after they've arrived.
A really complex web.
And these hurdles, they touch nearly every aspect of life and can have lasting impacts across generations.
And yet, what's truly striking through all of this is the resilience, the determination of the individuals who navigate these often daunting obstacles, frequently with limited resources, limited support.
Yeah.
That fundamental desire to build a better future for themselves, for their families, it's an incredibly powerful force.
It really makes you reflect. You think about those highly skilled people in entry-level jobs, or the emotional load on kids acting as interpreters.
Or even those unexpected cultural misunderstandings that can be so upsetting, despite good intentions sometimes.
Exactly. Hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a concise yet A thorough understanding of these multifaceted issues without being overwhelming.
Which kind of leads to a final thought for you to maybe chew on. Considering all these interconnected challenges we've talked about, what are some perhaps less obvious ways that society could better support the successful integration, the overall well-being of newcomers?
Yeah, ways to enable them not just to get by, but to truly flourish.
Maybe it's time we looked beyond just the broad statistics and really considered the individual human stories behind them more deeply.